Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're heading to a place that has captivated people for centuries. A place of myth and mystery, a place that has driven explorers to their limits. Antarctica.
Yeah, the bottom of the world, right.
Exactly. And we're not just talking about a frozen wasteland here. We've got a whole bunch of material to dive into: maps, old explorer accounts, even theories about ancient civilizations, and, let's just say some more out there ideas.
I've glanced at the material. You weren't kidding about out there.
Nope, not at all. But that's what makes this so fascinating, right? We're going to try to sift through it all, separate the fact from the fiction, the science from the speculation, and really try to understand why Antarctica, this one continent, holds such a powerful grip on our imaginations.
Right, because it's not just about penguins and icebergs. There's a lot more going on down there.
Way more. Okay, so let's begin with the basics, the geography. Antarctica is often called the last great wilderness. It's twice the size of Australia, practically all of it buried under this massive ice sheet.
And surrounded by, the Southern Ocean. That's not exactly a tropical cruise, is it?
Definitely not. You're talking about a place that's incredibly isolated, 98% ice and snow, a ferocious ocean as a barrier, and until quite recently, almost impossible to get to.
Yeah, even today. No permanent residents, just scientists coming and going. That kind of isolation. It's a big part of why Antarctica is so strategically important, and it's definitely fueled all those myths and mysteries.
Speaking of strategic importance, people might assume Antarctica is irrelevant to global affairs, but looking at our sources, there's a surprising amount of geopolitical stuff going on.
Oh, absolutely. You've got potential natural resources, krill, fish, algae in the ocean, minerals like iron and coal under the ice.
Right, and then there's the whole thing about global transportation routes, like the possibility of transpolar air travel.
And you can see how that strategic value has changed. Early 20th century, lots of nations scrambling to claim territory. It seemed like controlling Antarctica could be, a big advantage economically, politically.
Right, and then you get this amazing moment of international cooperation, the 1959 Antarctic Treaty. They basically put a freeze on all those claims, said peaceful collaboration comes first.
Which is remarkable, really. It's a unique example of putting potential conflicts aside. Even after World War II, you have someone like Admiral Byrd talking about air power and how even the poles aren't safe anymore.
That's true. He was really ahead of his time in seeing that.
Yeah, the whole idea of distance as a defense, gone. And today, it's about global monitoring, climate science, Earth observation, even space infrastructure. Antarctica, despite being so harsh, it still matters in the big picture.
Okay, so we've talked about the strategic stuff, but let's get real about just how extreme this wilderness is.
Yeah.
Our sources don't hold back. They describe this incredibly brutal environment, the coldest temperature ever recorded on Earth.
Minus 89.2 degrees Celsius. Let that sink in for a minute.
Yeah. Incredibly dry, so it's technically a desert. And those katabatic winds roaring downhill at over 200 miles per hour. Relentless.
It really is. And then you've got the ice itself. Think about it. Average elevation of the continent's 2,000 meters. And the ice sheet is almost 2 kilometers thick in some places.
That's hard to even picture.
Right. And then this coastline that stretches for 18,000 kilometers. Most of it is just huge ice cliffs. But even in this frozen world, you get these strange contrasts, like the McMurdo Drive valleys. They're actually ice-free deserts.
Yeah, I remember seeing pictures. It's bizarre. And then you've got those subglacial lakes, like Lake Vostok, trapped under miles of ice, potentially with life in them.
Which makes you wonder, right? How habitable is Antarctica, really?
Well, our sources are pretty clear on that. It's pretty much a zero right now. You can't grow anything. Everything has to be shipped in.
The human body just isn't made for those conditions. And if you compare it to the Arctic, it's even more striking.
Right, because in the Arctic, you have people who have lived there for thousands of years. But Antarctica, much more isolated, way colder, longer periods of darkness.
Even with the climate changing, you're talking about huge obstacles.
Yeah, like the polar night. Imagine months of complete darkness. And the soil is terrible.
The Antarctic Peninsula might be slightly better, but overall, it's really not about human settlement. Antarctica's value is in its pristine environment for scientific research.
It's wild to think that millions of years ago, this was a completely different place. Part of Gondwana, much further north. Warmer, forested.
Dinosaurs roaming around, even marsupials. It really changes your perspective.
Totally. But that freezing process started something like 34 million years ago. So no evidence of any advanced civilizations or even a livable environment in more recent times, anything close to human history.
Right, which is important to keep in mind.
Definitely. Now, this harsh environment, combined with the strategic stuff we discussed, it kind of makes sense why access is restricted. You can't just book a flight and pitch a tent.
Not quite. And that's where the Antarctic Treaty System comes in. It governs who can go there, what they can do.
Right. Starting with the 1959 Antarctic Treaty. It's international law, a cornerstone of diplomacy. The main idea is peaceful purposes only. No military bases, no weapons testing.
And a big one, all those national claims. Frozen. Antarctica belongs to no one. It's about international cooperation.
And then in 1991, you have the Environmental Protocol going even further. Antarctica is a natural reserve, all about peace and science. No mining allowed.
It's remarkable when you think about it. Globally, we're struggling with environmental protection and resource management. But with Antarctica, they said, let's protect this place.
Yeah, and the logistics of getting there are a huge barrier, too. It's expensive, it's dangerous.
You got a tiny window of time to operate during the summer. No infrastructure. It's not exactly a welcoming place.
So basically, it's not about hiding some big secret, right? These restrictions are there to protect the continent.
Exactly. You've got scientists from all over the world doing crucial research there, sharing their findings. It's about making sure that cooperation can continue without countries fighting over territory or resources.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Our sources take us back to ancient Greece, to the very first ideas about a southern land. Aristotle, way back in the 4th century BC, he reasoned that there must be a southern landmass to balance out the north.
Just based on logic. Antarcticos, he called it.
Right. Amazing how this concept, with no real evidence, took hold.
It did. And then you have Hellenistic thinkers like Eratosthenes, he calculated the Earth's circumference, and Hipparchus, who did a lot with astronomy and geography. They also thought there was probably land down south.
So the idea of Terra Australis southern land was born out of philosophy, not exploration. But this idea really stuck, didn't it? By Roman times, it had a name, and then Claudius Ptolemy in the 2nd century AD, he put it on his world maps.
A huge continent enclosing the Indian Ocean.
Yeah.
And Ptolemy's maps, they were influential for over 1,000 years. So you have this Terra Australis incognita, this phantom continent, driving explorers for centuries.
And it wasn't just an empty space on those maps. People imagined all sorts of things. A habitable land, maybe even exotic peoples and riches.
It shows the power of those early concepts, how they shaped exploration. Aristotle's logic, the space Eratosthenes calculated, and Hipparchus's work on coordinates. Their ideas laid the groundwork for the Age of Discovery.
And that brings us to the Piri, Reis, and Orontius Finaeus maps. They show landforms in the south that some people say look a lot like Antarctica long before it was supposedly discovered.
Right, which is why these maps are so central to alternative history theories.
Exactly. The Piri Reis map from 1513, it's just a fragment, but it shows a southern landmass. Some people say it's an ice-free Antarctica. But in 1513, no European had been anywhere near Antarctica.
And Piri Reis himself said he used older maps. It was common to just draw a big southern landmass based on that old Terra Australis idea.
Right, and if you actually compare the shapes, they don't really match. The Piri Reis map shows this landmass connected to South America. No Drake Passage, it's more likely a distorted South America.
Plus, the map's notes talk about a hot land, people trading, even large snakes. That doesn't sound like Antarctica.
Definitely not. Even if you imagine Antarctica without ice, the mountains and bays don't line up. It's more likely they just guessed based on what they knew about South America.
Right, a combination of real observations and educated guesswork.
Then we have the Orontius Finaeus map from 1531. This one is heart-shaped, and it shows a southern continent with coastlines and what look like rivers.
And this one actually does resemble Antarctica's shape a bit more, at least generally.
Yeah. But remember, this is still early in exploration. Finaeus probably used bits and pieces of information, maybe some Portuguese reports, maybe some glimpses of land or ice.
And then he filled in the gaps with that whole Terra Australis concept.
Exactly. And later maps, as people explored more, they show a shrinking Terra Australis. Cook's voyages in the 1770s really proved there was no huge southern continent in those temperate zones.
So the Finaeus map might have some accidental accuracy, coincidence mixed with limited information and imagination. Some things line up, but lots of inaccuracies too.
So, both these maps, they're products of their time. They tell us more about how people thought about the world than about Antarctica itself.
If there had been this advanced mapping of Antarctica, you'd expect other evidence, wouldn't you? Tools, written records. But we have none of that. And scientifically, we know Antarctica has been frozen for millions of years.
Which brings us to Charles Hapgood and his Earth crust displacement theory. He uses those map anomalies to argue that Atlantis was in Antarctica.
Pretty bold claim.
It is. Hapgood's idea is that the Earth's crust can rapidly shift, moving continents around. So Antarctica used to be in a warmer place, but then around 9600 BC, it shifted to the South Pole.
Taking Atlantis down with it.
Exactly. He used those maps, the Piri, Reis, and Finaeus ones, to say, see, Antarctica was ice-free. He also pointed to frozen mammoths in Siberia as proof of sudden climate changes.
He even had this idea of a prehistoric civilization that mapped the world, including an ice-free Antarctica.
Yeah, and those maps survived somehow and influenced later cartographers. But if you compare Hapgood's theory to plate tectonics, the generally accepted scientific model,
It doesn't really hold up.
right. Plate tectonics is about the slow movement of Earth's plates over millions of years. Hapgood was talking about rapid whole crust shifts. There's no real evidence for that.
Even Einstein, who initially was interested in Hapgood's ideas, pointed out flaws in his theory.
And scientifically, there's no evidence of a lost civilization in Antarctica. And the maps, as we discussed, they're not really proof of anything. Ice core data shows Antarctica has been frozen for a very long time, way before any supposed Atlantis.
So Hapgood's theory is interesting, but it's not supported by the evidence. It's more like pseudoscience. But it has become popular in some circles.
Yeah, it's definitely out there. Okay, let's move on to the Nazis and their interest in Antarctica. The 1938-39 expedition Neuschwabenland. It's a hotbed of conspiracy theories.
Secret bases, Hitler's escape. But the reality is a bit more mundane. It was mostly about whaling.
They needed that whale oil.
Exactly. Germany needed it for their wartime industry. So they went to Antarctica to claim a piece of it for their whaling operations. They mapped a huge area, Queen Maud Land. They even found an ice-free spot, the Schermacher Oasis.
So dropping those swastika pennants, that was about claiming territory, not building a secret base.
Right. And when the war started, any plans for bases were halted. No evidence of a secret base, then or later. After the war, Germany abandoned the claim anyway.
But there are all those rumors about U-boats going to Argentina, maybe even taking Hitler to Antarctica.
Right. The arrivals of U-530 and U-977 fueled those rumors. Then you have that Argentine news story in 1945 and a book in 1947 claiming a secret base called New Berchtesgaden.
But none of that has ever been proven.
Exactly. No evidence of Hitler being on those U-boats. No evidence of any base in German records. The British even had Operation Tabarin in 1944, setting up their own bases, and they found nothing.
And the whole thing about Nazi UFOs under the ice, that's probably just Cold War fiction.
Most likely. Their goals in Antarctica were pretty straightforward. Whaling. National prestige. The war got in the way, and after the war, Antarctica was internationally monitored. No Nazi holdouts.
Okay, so after World War II, the U.S. launches Operation Highjump in 1946-47, the largest Antarctic expedition up to that point. Admiral Byrd was in charge, and of course it's surrounded by conspiracy theories.
It was a big operation. The official goals were training in cold conditions, testing equipment, doing some science. But some believe it was about U.S. sovereignty, even though they denied it.
Right. They mapped a lot of coastline, tested helicopters, set up temporary bases. But the mission ended early, and there were some tragic accidents, a plane crash, some deaths.
And then you have that quote from Byrd, warning about hostile aircraft flying pole to pole.
Yeah, that one gets thrown around a lot.
People take it as evidence of a secret enemy, aliens or Nazis. But in context, Byrd was talking about the strategic importance of the poles, especially with the Cold War starting.
And then there's that whole secret diary story that came out in the 90s.
Pure fabrication. Byrd supposedly flew into a hollow earth, met an advanced civilization called Agartha. It's a fun story, but it's completely made up.
It's been thoroughly debunked.
Byrd's actual diaries are archived. They show nothing like that.
But the secret diary has fueled all sorts of theories about Operation Highjump. A secret attack on a Nazi base, an alien attack on Byrd's fleet.
Again, no evidence. No hidden battles, no signs of conflict in the official reports. And covering up a huge military operation like that would be practically impossible.
The UFO attack probably comes from a fictional movie about the expedition. It's amazing how fiction can influence these things.
It really is. In reality, Operation Highjump advanced polar science, showed U.S. logistics capabilities, mapped the coast. Byrd didn't find any hidden civilizations or aliens. It was a tough mission, but with normal challenges, not secret wars.
So we've covered the Nazis, we've covered Operation Highjump. Now, what about aliens and those subterranean civilizations? Those theories really take things to another level.
Antarctica seems to attract those kinds of ideas, doesn't it? Alien bases under the ice, frequent UFO sightings, strange structures and satellite images.
Right, like the giant staircase, and then there's the hollow earth theory, Agartha, with entrances at the poles. But scientifically, there's no evidence for any of this.
None. Some satellite images do show unusual things, like the Wilkes Land gravity anomaly, but that's probably from an old meteor impact. It's natural.
Conspiracy theorists often misinterpret what they see. No real artifacts, no confirmed UFO crashes. Even the story about Buzz Aldrin and aliens in Antarctica, that's been debunked.
The hollow Earth. No scientific basis. Seismic studies, gravity measurements, satellite images, they all show a solid Earth. The conditions inside would be impossible for life.
But those stories are everywhere. TV shows, YouTube, online forums, they love to show photos of supposed pyramids or buildings under the ice.
But the pyramids are just non-attacks, natural rock peaks sticking out of the ice. And those buildings, they're often just misinterpreted images or fakes.
And all those claims about tunnels and caves being secret bases?
Those are just natural formations. Lava tubes near volcanoes, subglacial tunnels from meltwater. Even that blowtorch cave is just a temporary ice arch. And the blood falls. That's just iron oxide in the water.
Building massive secret tunnels in Antarctica would be incredibly difficult, if not impossible.
Exactly. And with modern satellite imagery, it'd be very hard to hide. The real scientific mysteries in Antarctica are much more interesting, like that gravity anomaly, the fossil forests, the microbial life in those extreme environments.
And the vast areas that haven't been fully mapped, like the seabed and the subglacial geology.
Real science, not conspiracy theories. And think about it. Tourist travel is allowed, at least to some parts. If there were all these hidden bases, wouldn't someone have spoken up? Wouldn't we have found something by now? Thousands of scientists have worked in Antarctica.
Right. It all comes back to the allure of the unknown. People love a good mystery.
Absolutely. And sometimes those natural explanations are even more fascinating than the conspiracies.
Okay, let's wrap things up by talking about the 1959 Antarctic Treaty and the restrictions that come with it. It's really key to understanding how Antarctica is managed today.
The treaty says no one owns Antarctica. It's about international cooperation. No military activity, only peaceful purposes. Scientific research is encouraged.
And a big one. All those territorial claims, they're frozen.
Suspended, to be precise. And no new claims allowed.
Right. And then you have the ban on nuclear explosions and waste disposal. Antarctica was the first continent to be denuclearized by a treaty.
And to ensure everyone's playing by the rules, there are observer inspections. Transparency is built in.
And then you have the Environmental Protocol from 1991, making Antarctica a natural reserve, no mining allowed.
Indefinitely, though there's a provision for review in 2048. It's all about protecting the environment and promoting scientific research.
It's amazing that this system has worked for so long. It's a testament to what can be achieved when countries cooperate.
It really is. Even during the Cold War, the treaty held. And while some countries may have long-term interests in resources, the focus is on stability and the collective good.
Plus, right now, with the conditions being what they are, resource extraction is just not practical.
Right. The treaty helps keep Antarctica a peaceful place, a place for science.
So, no buying land, no commercial mining, it's all very clear.
And enforced through those international inspections.
Okay, so what about those modern conspiracy theories, the ones about ice walls and pyramids and tunnels?
The digital age has its own set of myths, doesn't it?
It seems so. The ice wall theory, the flat earth people, they say Antarctica is a giant wall of ice holding in the oceans.
No edge to the world, just this wall.
But of course that's nonsense. Ships have sailed around Antarctica, planes fly over it, satellite images show the whole thing.
And even amateur observers can see land and mountains. What they call an ice wall is probably just those coastal ice cliffs, which are impressive, but not some world-encircling barrier.
Then there are the pyramids. People online claiming they're artificial structures built by ancient civilizations or aliens.
Those are just nunataks. Natural rock peaks eroded into those shapes by wind and ice. Geologists have confirmed this.
And those supposed domes and buildings under the ice?
Misinterpreted images, often fakes. Radar does show subglacial features, but they're natural. Lakes, volcanoes, mountains.
No signs of artificial structures in the ice cores either.
None whatsoever. And those tunnel systems and hidden bases.
More natural explanations. Small lava tubes near volcanoes, subglacial tunnels from water flow. The blowtorch cave, that's just a temporary ice arch.
And the blood falls is just iron-rich water.
Building huge tunnels in Antarctica, let alone hiding them, would be incredibly difficult.
Right. It's just not plausible. But there are real mysteries in Antarctica, like that Wilkes land gravity anomaly, the fossil forests, the microbial ice in extreme conditions. Those are the things scientists are really excited about.
And the fact that we haven't fully mapped everything yet.
Exactly. The seabed, the subglacial geology, there's still so much to discover. But these real scientific mysteries, they're overshadowed by the conspiracy theories.
It's a shame because the natural explanations are often more fascinating.
And they tell us so much about our planet.
Okay, so to wrap up this deep dive, we've gone from the mythical southern land of the ancient Greeks to the very real Antarctica of today. It's a place of extreme conditions, international cooperation, and enduring mystery.
And it really shows how the human imagination works. Whether it's seeking cosmic balance, imagining lost continents, or searching for hidden truths, we're drawn to the unknown.
We can't resist a good mystery. But it's important to remember the difference between speculation and scientific evidence. And what's fascinating is that the real discoveries in Antarctica are often more incredible than the myths.
Absolutely. It makes you wonder what future generations will find as they continue to explore this icy realm, and how our understanding of Antarctica will change as the world changes, especially with climate change and the future of the Antarctic Treaty.
So much to think about. It's a truly unique place, Antarctica.
One of a kind.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
It's been a pleasure.